to access the chat, or is that? You see here. Okay.
Hey guys, give us just a second. We're coming on to the live now. Dennis, Chrissy, Alex, and we have special guest Benny. He is the father of Melissa Trumpy's two youngest children.
Tammy's there. She's just not in the screen.
Tammy's in there.
There we go.
I'm eating my dinner.
We're trying to get this to where Benny can see the comments as well.
Let's see.
Let's see. B, Mac, Tamara. Hi, guys.
Benny, are you doing this on a phone or are you doing it on a laptop or something?
On my phone.
Okay.
What is this?
I know sometimes it can be a little bit of a problem. Sometimes I use my laptop to do the show, and then I look at my phone to read the comments.
Yeah.
Saying we could pull the comments up on the screen like this as well.
Okay. Well, I think I got it. So
thank all of you for coming on here tonight, joining us on here. Thank you, Benny, for joining us to, share about this case. A lot going into this case. So
there is.
Let's start with Melissa. Melissa going missing, what led up to this, and just tell us a little bit about Melissa as well.
So Melissa was a good mother, not perfect or whatnot, but we all have issues. And her and I were together for, 10, almost 11 years. I'm trying to get back to this because I cannot. Okay, I'm going to just get out of there. Can you guys can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Melissa and I had 2 children together. Melissa had a older daughter from her prior marriage. I was married to somebody else before Melissa, and she was married to somebody else. So we met in, gosh, I got to think here. To be 2008, maybe 2009, and like I said, we're together for about 10 years. So Melissa had a job where she did in-home care for an old friend from school who was injured and a quadriplegic from a car accident and in her, I think, 20s. And when Melissa went to work for her, and this isn't to disparage this woman because I know she's got a rough life, being confined to a wheelchair and everything, but she had some major drug issues with opiates, probably because she was in a lot of pain with her situation or whatnot. But Melissa and her kind of were enablers for each other. And when I was with Melissa, she didn't have any drug issues. Maybe the only thing that I could really point out as far as a drug issue is that Melissa had ADHD, which I also did. And I was medicated as a child, but Melissa was medicated as an adult on Adderall. And so, although I didn't really like the Adderall thing because I kind of felt like it changed her personality, but when she went to work for Nicole, the quadriplegic lady, it just kind of, I think Melissa started using opiates with her at work, and she knew how I felt about that. And so, I just know too many dead people from opiates. So it's just something that I'm not okay with, because to me, it's like Russian roulette. So Melissa was kind of living what I believe is a secret life, coming home from work and hiding what she was doing for me and the kids. And a lot of times not coming home from work, she's got to stay overnight and take care of Nicole, and really sacrificed her own family to care for this woman. And they were just bad influences on each other. So I think Melissa understood how I felt about the opiates and probably got tired of living this secret life. And the girl that she was taking care of, the woman she was taking care of, she had a boyfriend that was selling heroin. And I was trying to tell Melissa, like, Melissa, you have got to get away from these people because they're going to take you down with them, you know? But I think what happened is Melissa developed a secret, you know, opiate addiction. And that boyfriend of this woman, Derek Hammer, was his best friend, I guess, at the time. So I think Derek came along, and here he's on heroin and methamphetamine and other hard drugs. And so I think Melissa just saw that as, here's somebody that she could be herself with, and that she doesn't have to hide what she's doing, you know, and live this secret life. So her and I split up over Derek. I wasn't really happy about it. We had some incidents over it, but I was more worried about my children being around this guy that's, you know, spun out on a bunch of hard drugs. So it wasn't like an easy split or anything. And my children went through a bunch of traumatic experiences. They watched Derek overdose on heroin. Melissa saved his life. And this is like maybe like a year before she disappeared. And my kids witnessed this all. I guess Melissa told me about it herself. And she said that Derek was blue and not breathing. And for 10 minutes, blue and not breathing. And my kids are witnessing this. So Melissa's doing CPR on Derek. And then she called the paramedics. And they came and they gave him that Narcan. And from the way it was described to me, that Narcan raised him from the dead.
Yeah.
And basically, just my kids saw a lot of fighting. And then a month before Melissa disappeared, there was a gun incident where Derek went bonkers in the house. He was hitting Melissa with like a kitchen utensil, like a spoon or a spatula. And of course, in front of my children. And then he pulled out a shotgun and pointed it at her. And of course, Derek was, you know, he's a felon. As a matter of fact, to hear his record, it sounds unbelievable. But so he's the suspect in other murders, including his dad's. His dad, Jeff Hammer, has a cold case homicide. Jeff Hammer's body was found on the same road that Derek and his friend, Jason Niesman, abandoned Melissa's truck on the same morning that Melissa disappeared. A year after his dad was murdered, he shot at a girlfriend that he was living with in Pearl City. And I guess she was fleeing his residence. And of course, he got a slap on the wrist for that. He completely got away with what happened to his dad. And I'm going to tell you, that is the police corruption, because we actually have some documentation of that. We have the name of the cop that covered it up. And we have people saying that he was involved in it too. The cop was involved in it too. And that is from Jeff Hammer's cold case homicide file. Also, and this is the craziest thing, and he served very little time. He served 2 years, which might sound like a lot of time to somebody,
No.
but the charges, so in 2000, it was either 2016 or 2017, Derek was living in Carson City, Nevada. He held a woman hostage in a drug house there. He made homemade bombs. I'm not even kidding you. The police, it's listed. This is public record. The police listed them as IED explosives. He took propane tanks and made Molotov cocktails and then basically put them all around this drug house that he was in with this woman. And he like held her hostage for a couple days, tortured her, strangled her repeatedly, and he got 2 years in prison. And I just feel like anybody else, like that's almost, to me, it's like he threatened to blow her up and the police up. To me, that is like a terrorist activity. And I think anybody else, if they didn't have the connections, anybody else would be doing some 25 years to life. You know, he got a slap on the wrist, just like when he shot at actually, I didn't tell you guys this, but the girl that he shot at in 2009, the year after his dad was murdered, was a girl named Brittany Gemmel. And her dad was an Ogle County sheriff's deputy. And so he shot at a sheriff's deputy. He held a woman hostage with bombs, and this. I mean, you just don't even hear about that. It's not even like you hear about a lot of crime and violent crime, but it sounds like fantasy or a bad movie. But it is. You guys can look it up. It's public record.
This is a total failure on law enforcement's behalf of everything that's ever happened.
Absolutely.
Seriously, I mean, every single incident that this guy has been involved in and everything, it's just been one failure that failed some other person that was a victim of some way, shape, form, or another, that he kept getting away and doing things.
Yep. I mean, and it's not, I don't think it's not him slipping through the cracks. It's people pulling strings for him. It's people in high places, people with power and money, and I believe all tied to this drug cartel activity in Northern Illinois and in Northwestern Illinois specifically. But it just seems like even when he was paroled from the hostage and bomb situation in Nevada, he got caught with another drug house in Illinois. He got caught for several DUIs. He got caught with pointing the gun at Melissa. So he's a felon in possession of firearms. He shot at women. He's held hostages with bombs. How come you couldn't charge him federally? Joe Blow on the corner gets caught with, $3 $50 rocks and a pistol, and he gets a federal gun charge. How come they couldn't give him a federal gun charge? And that's really bugged me this whole time. It's like, dude, he pointed a gun at Melissa in front of my children. And so that incident, I had full custody from 50-50 custody within 2 days of the gun incident. And I truly believe that saved my children's lives. And it's just, hell, what's that? I just feel like it's beyond a complete failure. It is people with money, and it is, people with power, and people tied to, not only organized crime, but people tied politically, with money that I believe that they're funding these people's campaigns there, and Derek's mother.
Jump in real quick. Guys, everything that Benny is saying here, a simple Google search of Melissa Trumpy missing, there are so many news articles out there that cover exactly what Benny is telling us tonight. It's confirmation between the two of them on this.
They still have not. Now, 3+ years later, this October here was 3 years, October 27th. They still have not charged him for what happened to Melissa. They refuse to address the accomplices, literally. So there's a lady on here that I just seen here a few minutes ago. I seen Corinne Wallace. Like, she came forward and provided information on Derek's cousin, Stephen Dapkus, and on their other accomplice, Jay Rhodes. And then we already knew about Niesman, because Niesman, they've proven that this Niesman helped Derek abandon Melissa's vehicle. You know what? They let him hide out at some woman's house for like maybe a month or two, and then they let him skip off down to the state of Florida. He lived his whole life in Illinois. Within a month and a half of this happening, he just decided to relocate to Florida, and the police just let him. Here he's a suspect. They know that he helped abandon Melissa's vehicle, and they just let him skip off out of state. Like it just didn't even matter. And then, so in Melissa's case, they listed all of these agencies they said were involved. They said Carroll County, Illinois, Ogle County, Illinois, Joe Davies County, Illinois, Stevenson County, Illinois, the FBI, the Illinois State Police, Greene County, Wisconsin, because Melissa was actually a Wisconsin resident. And you know what? Now, so we have a journalist, and he works on nothing but organized crime and corruption cases. And he contacted the FBI in Rockford. They deny that they were ever involved in Melissa's case. But here's the thing. The guy that abandoned the car, when he went to Florida, he was staying at his brother's house in Orlando. And we got the brother's phone number. We called him, and he started like kind of being cooperative with us. And he's like, I'm going to tell him to do the right thing. I'm going to do this and that. We called back, and he said the FBI agent, Wayne Jakowski, told him not to cooperate with Melissa Trumpy's family and friends. And I'm going to tell you, now they're denying that they're even involved in Melissa's case, as well as the Illinois State Police. They're saying the same thing. I contacted the Illinois State Police, the Internal Affairs Department. They said they'd never been invited into Melissa's case. It's on the news. You can Google the newscast about when they brought in the FBI, and FBI and Illinois State Police has joined the investigation of a missing Wisconsin woman who went missing in Illinois. Then we have the press release from Carroll County saying Illinois State Police, FBI. They're all denying that they were involved in Melissa's case because they're trying to wash their hands of it. They know it's a dirty case and they don't want to be tied to it. And it's like, to me, everybody is trying to just, pass the buck to another department or agency. They all pass it on to Carroll County. Well, Carroll County is where all this corruption is going on. Carroll County is where Derek's mother is the village clerk of Shannon. Carroll County is where, his mother was campaigning for the senator that's from her same hometown, and she was campaigning for him, and that's Andrew Chesney. And so she campaigned. I have a picture of her driving the campaign truck with his picture, and he's personally thanking, Andrew Chesney is personally thanking Denise Hammer for campaigning for him. And so they're all connected to these crooked, just corrupt political people. And I believe they're all connected with this whole drug trade thing. And I think that a lot of it is because A, it's Illinois, and B, because that area is the access for Northern Illinois to the Mississippi River. And during all this stuff, we developed a lot of information that a lot of the people who were involved in the drugs, the people that were involved with Derek and this Jay Rhodes, who we know beyond a shadow of a doubt helped Derek, is with his cousin and Niesman, and these guys are involved in this drug trafficking. And it's not like, petty people selling drugs on the corner. It's international drug trafficking. It's people moving drugs up the Mississippi River. And it's been going on for a long time, just unchecked, because people are paying people off, and there's high level people protecting them. So Melissa after the gun incident, there was a no contact order. Derek went to jail, of course, went to jail for guns, which he didn't get a federal charge for, or really any charge that stuck for the guns. And then drugs. Melissa also herself got charged with the drugs because it was her house in Wisconsin. And then she got charged with child neglect. Now, there's been a lot of victim blaming too. Oh, well, Melissa ran off because she was on drugs. Melissa ran off because she had criminal charges. Those charges that she got, and mind you, she got those charges as a victim. Derek pointed a gun at her. They went and raided her house looking for the gun. They found the gun. They found a couple other guns, and they found drugs. So at that point, she was 36 years old. At that point, she had a spotless, clean record until 1 month and 20 days before she went missing. And she got that record as a victim of a violent crime. But they victim blamed her, and I think that that's been part of the, I look at Gabby Petito's case. And how that was nationwide, big news all over. And I think Melissa's case, if anything, that not to say any case is worse than the other, but that Brian Laundrie had a spotless, clean record. He hadn't held people hostage with bombs. He hadn't shot at other people. He wasn't a suspect in his own father's murder, And I think that they used this false narrative and just victim blame Melissa. So to ruin her image so that she didn't get the type of attention that Gabby Petito got, you know, and not to say that anybody's more deserving of the attention, but I think if people really looked at Melissa's case, it's nuts. It is just, it literally, it's like a bad movie, but it's real life. And it's unreal. And the level that the police have gone to, they could have wrapped this case up. And this is no joke. Corrine can affirm this, but they could have wrapped up this case within a few weeks if they would have held all these guys and just leaned on them, and they would have broken them. Instead, they protected these guys and literally just let one guy leave to Florida. And then Corrine could tell you too, is that so we brought witnesses about what happened at Derek's cousin's house, Stephen Dapkus. Stephen Dapkus ripped out his kitchen floor a day or two after Melissa disappeared, and he lived in this apartment building that nobody is remodeling. Nobody's moving into this place. It was a slum. I mean, a super slum. Nobody's moving in and remodeling this place. The neighbors of Stephen Dapkus, is about a half a dozen neighbors, including Corrine Wallace's sister-in-law, said that they saw Melissa there that night shortly after he was at Derek's mother's house, which is the last official place that the cops know that Melissa was at Derek's mother's house. And so in between that time, we believe Melissa went with Derek to his cousin's house. So a half a dozen of the neighbors of the cousin said that she was there. Police refused to talk to those people. When he ripped out the kitchen floor, not only that, the detective, David Mercado, who is the homicide detective there, he said Stephen Dapkus lives with his mother. What, is she involved in this too? I got the text from him saying this. I saved them because to me, it's like he lied to protect these guys. Stephen Dapkus didn't live with his mother. The apartment building I'm talking about was 25 miles away from Stephen Dapkus's mother's place. Stephen Dapkus's mother lives across the street from Derek's mother in Shannon. The apartment building is 25 miles away outside of Mount Carroll. And, you know, the detective lied and said Stephen didn't even live there. And he's like, Stephen Dapkus lives with his mother. He was real condescending. He's like, what, is she involved in this too? And I'm like, yeah, if she's telling you Stephen lives with her or she lives with Stephen, she is involved because she's protecting him. And then when he finally, so it took me arguing with him for a couple days to get him to admit where Stephen really lived, right? And he's lying to me this whole time. And I'm telling him we know better. And when he finally admitted it, and I'm telling him, you know, Stephen's neighbors are saying that he's ripping out his linoleum kitchen floor. And this is within days of this happening. And they're like, David Mercado said, we sent 2 detectives to Stephen Dapkus's apartment. And now after lying and saying Stephen lived with his mother, if he would have ripped out his kitchen floor, they would have noticed it. You know, it was layers of linoleum and then whatever goes underneath the linoleum ripped out. Blind detectives with blind walking canes could have missed what Stephen's ripped out kitchen floor. And so at the time he's telling us this, we had pictures, a dozen plus pictures of the ripped out linoleum kitchen floor that neighbors took and sent to us. And it's like this whole time they refused to question the neighbors. They're saying a couple of neighbors said Melissa was bleeding from her head and left there and that she was allegedly still alive. And this is like 2 or 3 in the morning. So the same night, 4 a.m. in the morning. Now, here's the thing. Melissa's vehicle, the GPS was backtracked. So that same night she disappeared, her vehicle actually did sit in Shannon outside of Derek's mother's house. So we know that Melissa went in another vehicle to Stephen Dapkus's apartment. This is one of the fishy spots where the cops are trying to cover it up to protect the cousin and the other people who helped him. So when 4:30 in the morning, 4 or 4:30, Denise Hammer made several 911 calls. And to this day, the police still refuse to release them. And we're like, they can release body cam footage when a cop shoots an unarmed person before trial. You can't release these 911 calls because they know that it not only incriminates Derek, it incriminates Derek's mother. So Derek's mother was terrified, called 911. I have heard some of what's on these 911 calls, and allegedly she was terrified, the mother. Derek wouldn't allow her into her own basement, and whether or not it's on the 911 calls or what she told cops that morning, because a SWAT team was assembled, just like the SWAT team that raided Melissa's house a month and 20 days prior when Derek pointed the gun at Melissa. When they come for Derek, they know his record of shooting at people and murder suspect and who holds hostages with bombs. They're not sending 2 uniformed cops to his door. They assemble a SWAT team of like half a dozen to 10 different agencies. And when they come for him, it looks like a military action. Literally, we're talking about helicopters and those Bearcat, whatever, breaching vehicles that look like tanks, when they come for him. And this is twice within a month and a half. They assembled 2 different SWAT teams, one for the raid on Melissa's house, the other for the raid on his mother's house. So that morning, the mother told police that Derek was leaving her house with some tarps or a Christmas tree bag in her nice folding tables. She got woken up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and this is the night that Melissa disappeared. So at the same time, that morning, the mother quit cooperating. And when she quit cooperating, she did a 180 and lawyered up. Then her story started changing. Mind you, this whole time she's remained the Shannon village clerk and in a position of, like an official position where she's connected. I mean, she pays the Shannon police's salary. She writes their paychecks. She is affiliated with Andrew Chesney. She is affiliated with the judges, with the entire county. She's affiliated with the Shannon Village Board is affiliated with the county board, and they're all connected and they're all protecting her the same way they protected the family when the dad was murdered, And truly, I believe if they would have held him and I believe this corrupt police and likely his mother accountable in his dad's death, then Melissa would still be here today. If they would have held him for longer than 2 years in Nevada for the bomb and terror, like hostage situation and torturing this woman and holding her hostage for days, if they would have held him longer than 2 years, or when he got caught with the drug house in Illinois, if Illinois would have contacted Nevada and said, hey, Derek Hammer just violated his parole in Illinois. We want to send him back to you. There's so many different things that when my son reported the gun incident at the home, this is a month and 20 days before Melissa disappeared. He was trying to save Melissa. My son, literally, to me, my son is a hero because my son, he was 6 years old at the time. And he reported Derek, hitting his mother with the kitchen utensil, screaming about some pills he couldn't find, and then pointing the shotgun at Melissa. They should have stopped him right then and there. Instead, Derek got bonded out, of course, by his enabler mommy, with this money and power. So she bonds him out, gets him the best attorneys, and I believe uses her, official pull and connections to these attorneys and connections to drug traffickers to get him out of trouble when he's in trouble. So when he was bonded out, there was a no contact order written directly into the bond. It said Derek Hammer is to have no contact with victim Melissa Trumpy. So the mother also helped him violate that no contact order. She had Melissa and Derek in her house for days. In fact, 2 weeks before Melissa disappeared, Derek was back. They were back at Melissa's place in Wisconsin. Derek was in a high-speed chase with her vehicle, and he actually outran the police. Well, they were trying to get Melissa to cooperate in this high-speed chase, and they were pressuring Melissa to tell on him. And of course, they were pressuring Melissa to tell on him when he was still free out on bond on the streets. You know, if he would have been in jail, maybe then they could have pressured her to cooperate. The day before Melissa disappeared, Melissa went to court over the custody stuff because I got custody 2 days after the gun incident. So Melissa went to court over that, and her mom went with her. And so me and her ex didn't have to go because we kind of put in our motions the hearing before that. So Melissa didn't put her motion in for what she wanted to do with the custody thing. And really, truly, the judge just wanted her to get clean from the drugs. And me and her ex-husband from before me didn't want the kids around Derek. That was our number one thing. We wanted the kids to have a relationship with Melissa. We wanted the kids to be able to see Melissa and the no contact with the kids to be lifted. But we did not, neither one of us wanted Melissa around Derek or the kids around, more the kids around Derek. Melissa's an adult, but at the same time, we didn't want her around Derek either. And the judge didn't either. So at this whole time, there's so many different places where they failed. Derek was out on bond. Then he gets in this high-speed chase, so the police are pressuring her. She went to that custody hearing the day before she disappeared. As her and her mother were leaving court, 2 Greene County, Wisconsin detectives pulled her aside and questioned her for 2 hours about Derek driving her car in this high-speed chase. The next day, she's a missing person. I also believe it's a failure on Wisconsin law enforcement too, because they knew Derek was out on bond. They knew Derek's shot at women. He's a suspect in murders. He's held hostage with bombs, all of this stuff. So I just feel like they let my children down. They failed my kids. They failed Melissa. They failed everybody. The rest of Melissa's family, they failed the community because people don't need Derek Hammer on the streets. So they picked Derek up that morning. There were so many things that happened the morning that Melissa disappeared. Derek stole another car in Shannon, Illinois. They got fingerprints off that. Now, this is after his friend had dropped him off. And I think he couldn't get a hold of his friend because they both shut their phones off. And this is after the friend helped him abandon Melissa's vehicle. And after his mom had called 911 and he left in a hurry with these tarps and Christmas tree bags. So later on, they processed the GPS in Melissa's. So she's driving a rental vehicle too because her vehicle was damaged. The radiator was blown out in that high-speed chase. Derek got away from the police, but a few miles away in the next county, he blew the motor up in Melissa's vehicle. They had witnesses too because he was asking for people for rides to Melissa's house. So they had like 3 witnesses. They knew it was him. They didn't need Melissa as a witness. They already had 3 witnesses. So all of this stuff happened. Melissa's driving a rental vehicle. They backtracked the GPS. Melissa's vehicle sat outside of his mother's house, Derek's mother's house, all night. And then, in violation of the protection order, because the mother knew, she bonded him out. She knew that Derek and Melissa weren't supposed to have contact. She facilitated that in her own home. And of course, still to this day, remains the village clerk of Shannon. So then Melissa's vehicle went from, after his mother called the 911, about that time in the morning, Melissa's vehicle left and it went to the airplane hangar that his uncle was the owner of. I thought he was still the owner. There's some really suspicious stuff going on with that. The hangar was registered with the FAA, and this is no joke. This is public record too, in a dead guy's name who committed suicide in 2012, Dwayne Sneak. The hangar was registered as an active airport, and of course, all those years from 2012 on, they had planes flying in and out of there, crop duster planes, and airplane being kept in the shed, you know, and the runway being because it's a grass runway, being manicured and taken care of. And it said the owner and manager of this airport was this Dwayne Sneak, who'd been dead since 2012. So there's some really suspicious stuff going on with this airplane hangar. And I believe that's because they're flying drugs and money in and out of there. And there's some pretty good documentation backing that up. But Melissa's vehicle went from the airplane hangar back to his mother's house, Derek's mother's house. Then it went to his friend Jason Niesman's house. Then it went to where it was abandoned. The cops let this Jason Niesman lie and say Derek showed up there walking. They knew he showed up in Derek's vehicle because the GPS said that he did. And they knew there wasn't time for Derek to show up walking. The friend had to have helped him, that Niesman had to have helped Derek abandon the vehicle. So the airplane hangar is connected to another fishy suicide. So there was another missing person in Shannon, this town of 900 people, village of 900 people. And of course, you Google missing people in Shannon, there's never been any others supposedly from Shannon. About 8 months after Melissa went missing, there was this Cole Shoney. Where is he missing from? Bolton Road, a farm on Bolton Road, where Derek's dad was found murdered, where Melissa's vehicle was found abandoned. And this Cole Shoney, 2 months after he was a missing person, they find him deceased on his property. And we FOIA requested his suicide report. So he died of a firearm shot. And the crazy thing is, in the suicide report, it says that the person that found his body is this guy named Brett Wiesner, Woessner. Brett Wiesner also lists of, now this is like 3 or 4 miles away from the airplane hangar. It's in a different county even, because so Bolton Road, that part of Bolton Road where Derek's dad was found murdered, Melissa's vehicle was found on, and this Cole Shoney was missing from the farm on Bolton and Stanton or Spring Valley Road, which Stanton turns into Spring Valley. It's the same road. But that property and that area is 3 or 4 miles away from the airplane hangar. The airplane hangar is in Ogle County, and it's got a Forreston address because it's in between Shannon and Forreston. So Brett Wiesner and his brother Brad also show up as owners. There's some really weird overlapping ownership to this airplane hangar. It's bizarre because it shows all these different owners. It shows Joe Hammer, Derek's uncle. It also shows these Wiesners. But then the airport itself, it's on the property, showed that it was owned by Dwayne Sneak and managed by Dwayne Sneak, and Dwayne has been dead since 2012. Those records with the FAA were on their 2022, their 2023 records with the FAA. We complained to the FAA about that. Like, how does a dead man who's been dead for 12 years, he committed suicide, how is he responsible for an active airport? You know, you think that they monitor airports a lot better than that because, I mean, planes are just kind of like, I don't know, like you can do anything with a plane. Look at 9/11, you know, and you would think that, or fly drugs around and anything, or fly, I mean, you could fly people in and out of the country. There's a lot you could do with a plane that they should be better monitored than an airport being run by a dead guy for since 2012. And we complained about that. They finally transferred ownership and management, and like it was just last year, it was 2023, like maybe the middle or end of 2023, they finally transferred the ownership out of Dwayne Sneak's name. And like I said, though, the airport was owned and managed by Dwayne all these years after his death. The land, though, it showed all these different owners within just a short period of time, one being Derek's uncle, the other being Brett Wiesner, who found Cole Shoney's body. So suspiciously enough, when Cole Shoney was found deceased, at the bottom, they put out a press release. I showed Dennis this. They put out a press release. At the bottom of the press release, it says, and just as such red flags to me, but it says that we do not believe that this suicide of Cole Shoney has any connection to the disappearance of Melissa Trumpy. Well, absolutely it does. By Bolton Road, Cole's missing from Bolton Road. It does to the hangar because the same guy that found Cole Shoney's body is also listed as one of these overlapping owners. And him and his brother, Brett Wiesner, and his brother, Brad Wiesner, are shown as also as owners of this hangar too. And it's bizarre. It's really hard to even tell ownership because it lists so many people. Also, so we looked at the tax records. Joe Hammer was paying the tax records at one point. Before him, I think it was Kent Shoney. It was Cole Shoney's relative. So they're all tied and interconnected, both the Bolton Road. They're all tied and interconnected to that airplane hangar. That airplane hangar, they know that Melissa's body was there because they had cameras too. Now here's the thing. The uncle, when they went and asked the uncle, which I don't know why they asked him if it says Brett Wiesner and Brad Wiesner now own it and Joe Hammer doesn't anymore, but they asked Joe Hammer, is there cameras at this hangar? Because they had Melissa's vehicle GPS there. He said no. The guy that owns the airplane, which is this Craig Woodley of Woodley Aerial Spraying, which is like a crop duster service, contradicted that. And he said there's cameras there. So, but by the time they got out there, the cameras had overwritten themselves on the digital video recorder because it must have been set on like a 30-day or 90-day loop. By the time that they went, because the uncle lied and said there was no cameras, by the time they got out there, it had rewritten itself, overwritten itself. Well, I
want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, I'm sure you guys have already thought of this because I was going to bring up the tax record stuff, but you got me on that one. So I would assume that you guys had pulled all the records with the FAA on what planes were flying in and out of there the day that she disappeared. Her truck was found there. Because, let's be honest, if they've got planes flying in and out of there, what's not to say they didn't put her on a plane?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I assume that people have looked into what, FAA numbers on the planes were in that location through the was there any type of record keeping that was listed?
So this is the thing here is that we contacted the FAA. They've never, ever responded to us. I filed an online complaint and detailed all of this and said that Melissa could have been flown out of there. That's something we've considered since we learned that there was an airplane hangar involved. Also, so it was officially searched twice. The second time, they actually allowed Melissa's search team, which, we went out there with the cops for the second search, cadaver dogs on both searches. And mind you, these searches were months and months apart. I want to say 7 or 8 months apart from each other. So the cops searched it by themselves, the first search. Cadaver dogs hit behind the shed the plane was kept in, right next to the shed. And that's where, that video, I told you the video overrode itself. But here's the thing. They have a program. They brought that all back up. But here's where it gets tricky. They said that when they do that, it brought it, because when you have a DVR overwrite itself, they have programs to bring back what was written over. So they brought it back up. This is where they start their lying. They said they can see Derek pull in at 4 in the morning or something. I'm just give or take 4:30 in the morning. They seen Melissa's truck pull in. They seen Derek drive in. They seen him drive behind the shed where the cadaver dogs hit. And then 5 minutes and he's out of there. And they even said he fishtailed through the ditch, driving through the ditch to get out of there. Then, so now you got to remember, Derek got picked up by a SWAT team at his mother's house the next morning. We believe Melissa's body was there and did not leave there until someone else came and got Melissa's body, because Derek got picked up before he could do anything. I think he tried to go home, smooth things over with his mom and the police, but because of the stuff in Wisconsin, the high-speed chase and violating his bond and stuff, Wisconsin wanted him. So they were pressuring Illinois to pick him up. So they assembled that other SWAT team, and of course they picked him up from his mother's house around, I would say, in between 11 and 1, that, later that morning that Melissa disappeared. So also, when they reported it as a hostage situation. The SWAT team thing, they reported as a hostage situation at his mother's house. And they were, for a couple days, they were saying he held his mother and his stepdad. His stepdad was in hospice. He died a few days later. His stepdad did. He held his mother and his stepdad hostage. He wouldn't leave the house when the SWAT team showed up. And his brother was there, and I think maybe his brother and his brother's wife were there. And it was reported as a hostage situation. It was on damn Facebook. There were pictures again of the tanks and helicopters and all that. There was 2 helicopters. There was those armored vehicles and all that stuff. And it looked like a damn army around his place. And you know what? A few days later, they backtracked that and just said, oh, no, we were there to pick him up on a warrant. But everybody, his neighbors, were saying it was a hostage situation. Everybody, right? And saying who he held hostage: his mother, his dad, his stepdad on hospice care, and then his brother and his brother's wife. So in that time, though, between the hangar, going back to his mother's house, then going back. I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up here, but I should tell you, I should not move on before I finish this. The videos that they have of him pulling in there, driving behind the hangar, and then driving out. Now, they say when they pull it back up, when it's written over itself, that it's out of chronological order. But to me, it just sounds stupid. You watched him pull in there. You watched him pull out. You didn't just keep watching the video to see what happened from there. And cadaver dogs hit behind the shed. Then months and months later, when the police and even us, Melissa's search team, searched it again, cadaver dogs hit in the same exact spot. And this is like 7 or 8 months later. And they hit in the same exact spot. And I just like it. We always thought exactly what you were saying. Melissa might have been flown out of there. I mean, there's so many different possibilities. At the very least, what's that?
No, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. At the very least, somebody else came back and got Melissa's body, because Derek was picked up by a SWAT team a short time later. We believe that it is probably his buddy Jay Rhodes and maybe his cousin Stephen Dapkus, plus his other cousin who's had said some really nasty things to Melissa's sister, that if she wants to see Melissa again, she better kill herself and commit suicide. And so he even said this, and this is awful, but he said that he smelled the decomposition on Melissa's breath. Melissa's sister reported this to the sheriff. Nothing. He also said, when she said, oh yeah, the feds are going to get you, he said, we are the feds. That's what the cousin, Mitch Hammer, said. Mitch Hammer also, on his Facebook page, you can go look up Facebook right now, Mitch, is it William Mitchell Jr., Mitch Hammer Jr., William Hammer Jr., and it shows that he works for Craig Woodley too. And the house next to the hangar, that was Mitch's childhood home. So you got all these people involved with this, and they do not want to address, the police do not want to address that hangar, because they're trying to say they don't know who came back and got Melissa's body. What did you just do? You stopped watching the video once Derek came in and drove out of there, and and they know that Melissa's vehicle went back to his mother's house, went to Jason Niesman's house, and then went to where it was abandoned, from Jason Niesman's house. So she couldn't have been in the vehicle from back to the mother's house or back to Jason's house or back to where the vehicle was abandoned at. They know who's on that video. that came back and got her. They know who it is, and they are protecting those people. Abs 100%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And this whole time, they acknowledge that they know Derek's responsible. But they are trying to play it off that he's this one-man army and he did all of this by himself. And they're writing off the airplane hangar. They're writing off what happened to Stephen Dapkus's apartment and him ripping out his linoleum kitchen floor. And it's just all of it. There's just so much more. It's honestly, I could talk about this for months because there's so much to it and it's so complex. But it also that Jay Rhodes, his brother-in-laws, his sister's husband's two brothers, run this business out on the Mississippi River, out at this it's actually an old army base, and it's been closed since 2000. And it's in the same county. It also goes into the next county, but it's the old Savannah Army Depot. And I can tell you this, when we mentioned these guys, the police admitted that these guys are involved in drugs. And even, the detective from Wisconsin, who was also assisting the Illinois cop, said, "We can't believe that you stumbled onto this drug ring, but we don't believe that they're doing the type of stuff that you think they are." And I said, "They're on a damn army base. They're on the Mississippi River." I said, "What do you think they're selling out there? Dime bags? I mean, come on. What do you think they're doing? They're moving dope up the Mississippi River." And these are big time people who are very rich. And the guy, so there's two brothers. They're actually twins, Brian and Michael Potempa. Brian Potempa also has a pilot's license as well and has helicopters. There's pictures of him flying his helicopters around. These are high-level people, and the cops know that they're involved in drugs. But then, these are the same type of cops who would arrest a person driving down the street with a dime bag and send them to jail, but they laugh off these guys being involved in drugs. They admit while they're laughing it off that, yeah, we know they're involved in drugs, but we don't think they're doing what you think they're doing. They got pilot's licenses. They're out on the Mississippi River. People are saying they're huge in the drug game. People are saying there's some kingpins and that they're hooked up with the Mexican cartels. So all these cops are protecting them. It's all just it goes so deep to just, honestly, it'll make this what I told you guys now will probably make your head spin for a while. I mean, it's just so much. It's so complex, and there's just so much to it. But we've brought witnesses to, from Stephen Dapkus's neighbors to Corrine Wallace to Jay Rhodes, his child's mother, who came with me and Corrine Wallace to speak to the detective. Now, this is 2.5 years ago. Detective Mercado refused to interview them about Jay and his involvement. And this is Derek's friend and Derek's cousin, Stephen Dapkus, and Jay Rhodes. And they refused to look at Stephen's ripped out floor. They refused to interview the neighbors. And even Corrine Wallace and Jay Rhodes, his son's mother, who came to the Carroll County Sheriff's Department with me, David Mercado said, "Oh, we've got all the witnesses we need." That was like 2.5 years ago, and they still haven't solved this case. I've always been told that every witness is a good witness until proven otherwise. You take every bit of information in a case like this. They don't want the information. The detective has done nothing, but he's such a compulsive liar. He can't even remember the lies that he told you the last time that you had a conversation with him. Every time you talk to him, it's something different. And this guy is not that smart of a liar, saying that, Stephen Dapkus lives with this mother. What is she involved in this too? We sent 2 detectives to Stephen Dapkus' apartment. If he'd have ripped out his kitchen, I'll show you guys the pictures of his ripped out linoleum kitchen floor. And you look at the apartment, nobody's moving in to, do some home improvements there. And it's, they've just done nothing but deny it. So when the day when Derek was picked up by the SWAT team, he had huge scratches all over the right side of his face, right? Guess what pictures they released of him in his booking photos? Now listen to this. Tell me if this doesn't sound bizarre. He's got a towel over his right shoulder. You can see it in the picture. They only released the front picture and the left picture. But even in the front picture, you can see scratches all up and down the side of his face. You can see it plain as day, even in the front picture. So I've been to jail before, not there in Illinois, but you know, when you get booked, I've never ever seen a booking photo that's not left, center, and right. You know, they do all three. Then that David Mercado told Melissa's sister, Mandy, that Derek got those scratches on his face riding a lawnmower. But he told me Derek got those scratches on his face in a bar fight a day or two before Melissa went missing. Oh, let's see him in some pictures before she went missing. Let's see. I'd like to see that, Mercado. Just a compulsive liar. This not definitely. It's beyond mishandling Melissa's case. And I believe Mercado's involved with the drug ring. I believe they're all covering up. There's so many more. I mean, honestly, I'm leaving out so many more details and there's so much to it. I could go on. And it's it's unreal. And it doesn't even, sometimes to me, it's mind blowing. It's a lot to have in your mind thinking about this stuff too. It's almost overwhelming because there's so much stuff to it. And that's just the first night that Melissa disappeared. So Derek, when he got dropped off by that Nieceman, he also stole a car in Shannon, Illinois. And for 45 minutes, and listen to this is the craziest thing. This is the car they got his fingerprints out of. A woman, her husband was at work. They also lived in Derek's, I don't know if it was his cousin or aunt or something, owned that house before these people they were renting there. And so the guy was at work. There was a little white Toyota Avalon sitting outside, and the lady saw the car just drive off from in front of her house, but her husband was at work. So she went to the Shannon Village Police to report it stolen. By the time she came home, it was back, which is just bizarre. But 45 minutes the car was gone for. Then after that, a neighbor seen Derek cutting through some backyards and hopping fences in his neighbor's yards. And then the same neighbor, who also was very close, like Jason Nieceman's girlfriend, close to Derek and, his getaway driver, or, the one that helped abandon Melissa's vehicle. So she lives the next street down from Derek's mother and like several houses up. But this lady said she told friends that she saw Derek burning electronics in his mother's fire pit behind his house, burning electronics and clothes. I'm going to tell you, I've seen the lady's house that reported this, and I've seen Derek's mother's house, the backyard to it where the fire pit would be. There is no way, even if the leaves, late October, the leaves are gone from the tree. Even if they were, there is no possible way that she saw that. That Jason Nieceman either told her or she was there. By the way, Jason Nieceman did actually tell her some stuff. So he told her he was crying and hysterical and called her at like some 5 or 6 in that morning and told her, don't go out of your house. There's something really bad going on. Then he was at Derek's cousin's house, Mitch Hammer, screaming and crying and hysterical. And he kept saying, my 2 best friends are going away to prison for life. For what? You don't know anything. You're telling the cops you don't know anything. Derek showed up at your house walking for her. How come you're telling people your 2 best friends are going away to prison for life? And who's your other friend? Jay Rhodes is his other best friend, him and Derek. And so they never got Derek for the stolen car, even though they admitted that his fingerprints were in it. Allegedly, they luminoled the trunk. They said there was no DNA in the trunk because we thought, well, that was another possibility from the airplane hangar too. that maybe he drove Melissa's body in that car that he stole, and then returned it. But they luminalled it. They said there was no evidence in that. So around this time, Corrine Wallace, who's actually on here, came forward and she said, she used to be Stephen Dapkus's boss. Her and her husband or boyfriend, Corey, owned like some remodeling company, and they had been employing Stephen Dapkus. Now, a week before Melissa disappeared, Stephen was asking Corinne to go pick up Melissa in Wisconsin because Melissa's car had been damaged in the this is before Melissa had the rental vehicle. So he'd ask Corinne if she would drive him to Wisconsin to pick Melissa up for his cousin, right? Because Derek is being looked for that high-speed chase. So Corinne comes forward, and she also mentions her tenant, who's these guys' friend, this Jay Rhodes, that he'd gotten really fishy about this. And Corinne was asking about, what about that missing girl? And I mean, she can tell you what Jay told her, that you don't want to mess with this. These are dangerous people. You don't want to get involved in this and that. But then the other tenant, who is Jay Rhodes' son's mother, is Courtney Baker. She comes to Corinne and says, Corinne, Jay was gone during the night when this happened. And the next couple nights, he was just gone. And he took her vehicle, which was another white Toyota, but it was like a little SUV, a Toyota RAV4. She believed that Jay helped to hide Melissa's body, and she came forward. She even put a big Facebook post about it, that she believed that he was involved. She also woke up one morning, and this guy doesn't hunt. She woke up like 7, 8 in the morning, and this guy's all in, like camo fatigues and stuff. He's going hunting. He's all in camouflage, and he'd been out with her vehicle all that night, and her vehicle was trashed. Like he'd been doing off-roading. It was covered in mud. It was all messed up and covered in mud. She actually had to trade it in like a month or two later after that because it wasn't running right. He damaged it during all that. And then there was a saw. There was like a saw in the backyard, and forget the saw and something else. But basically the mother of his son came forward and put a Facebook post. So then she put a restraining order on him. David Mercado refused to come and look at her car. And so then at that point, the vehicle, she ended up trading it in. And Corinne and I called the place, the auto place that she traded it into, which was in Rockford. It was Grody Automotive. And we asked them to put a hold on it, and that they put a hold on the car. They got Stevenson County, because that was another county involved in Melissa's case, and that's because even though Melissa went missing in Shannon, her vehicle was abandoned in Stevenson County. So Stevenson County was one of those other counties involved. Stevenson County sent evidence technicians to Grody Automotive. I swear, they found something in that car, and they had never told the truth about it, because the receptionist for Grody Automotive told Corinne and told myself that they came there to Grody, the evidence technicians for Stevenson County did, and they found something in the vehicle. They told the receptionist that they found something in the vehicle. Then they impounded the car for a while and took it for more evidence testing. Then they never, ever, ever, nothing else. You just don't hear nothing else about it. But allegedly, they'd found something in that vehicle. Plus, Courtney Baker, Jay Rhodes' son's mother, believed that Jay used her vehicle and put a big statement out on Facebook saying, that he was involved with Derek, and she believed that they were both involved in what happened to Melissa. And so her and Jay split. Now, here's the thing. Jay went to Savannah, where the Army Depot is, because he was working there for his in-laws. And so he was out in Savannah, he started dating a bartender for a couple months. After they split up, she contacted me. She said that he was involved in what happened to Melissa. So here's girl number 2. So they were only together for a couple months. Then Jay started dating another lady in Savannah. Now, she wouldn't tell us anything because she was protecting him. She told her best friend, this lady named Ashley. I still have the messages Ashley sent me out of the blue. Says that this girl, I forget what Caressa, which was the third girl who came out about Jay Rhodes' involvement. She didn't tell us, but she told her friend Ashley that Jay was involved. He was protecting Derek. He was there with Melissa's body and all this stuff. Also, all three of them. So the children's mother said Jay's involved with drugs with the Potempas out on that depot, out on the Army depot. The second girl, the bartender, said the same thing. Jay's involved. Whatever they're doing out there, it's some shady stuff, and it's drugs. And he's gone. He'll disappear. He goes to the Twin Cities. He goes to Missouri. He goes here or there. He's out of town all the time. They're running drugs around for, out of the depot. The third girl, that Caressa, told this Ashley that, yeah, he moves drugs for Brian Potempa. Same thing. He's out of town. He's this and that. So when Derek would get arrested, when Derek got arrested, Jay was hiding and laying low. So Derek at one point in time ended up getting bailed out again, right? During the midst of all this. And people were upset. People were finally like realizing, all the crimes he's involved in, realizing he's suspect in his dad's murder. When people heard about the bomb and hostage situation, people heard about him shooting at his girlfriend. Well, they find out they gave this dude bail again. They're still not charging him as a suspect in Melissa's disappearance, and that he's back out on the streets, and people were really upset. Of course, then again, when Derek got out, Jay Rhodes went into hiding. Those girls couldn't find him, and they said he's scared. He's scared because Derek's out and this and that. Then when Derek got arrested, all of a sudden then Jay pops back up. So Derek got arrested again. He was out on bond again. This is like the second time since, the gun incident. And he went over to his neighbor's house and he threatened his neighbor, Ken Preston. That's his mother's neighbor in Shannon. And he said, "I'm Derek Hammer. Don't you know I'll kill you?" And then got arrested. The next day, it violated his bond in Wisconsin again. And they sent him back to Wisconsin. This is what I believe. I believe he got out and he realized that these people were after him. His own people were after him for bringing all this heat on them over, Melissa. And then now, so he was in prison in Racine a few months ago. He assaulted an inmate in the prison in Racine, and they transferred him to Waupun. But he did that right when they were talking about bringing him back to Illinois to face charges in the weed house from 2019 that he still hasn't been, he's been charged with it, but he's still never been to court from 2019. That's the weed house he got caught with when he was still on bond from Nevada. And they're trying to bring him back to Illinois for that. All of a sudden, he assaults an inmate in the prison in Wisconsin. I think he knows that his own gang in Illinois has had enough of him. Yeah. And that's why he went and threatened the neighbor, because I think he got out. He was out for a week. People were like, oh, well, he was probably methed out. He was probably high and this and that. He went and did that. I think he was scared because he realized, maybe he got wind of something or he just felt nervous. But I think he put himself back in the Wisconsin jail there. And I think in Wisconsin prison, as soon as they wanted to send him back to Illinois. And so he got another misdemeanor case for threatening the neighbor. At the court for the neighbor, for this misdemeanor threatening him, Derek's attorney said Derek does not want to come back for the hearing. Can't we just do it on a Zoom hearing? And they're like, no, well, he needs to be present. And they're like, well, Derek refuses to come back. Just, send the guards, handcuff him, stuff him in a van, bring him back to Illinois. But somehow or other, they're keeping him in Wisconsin, and they won't even bring him for his charges in Illinois, you know? And it's just, it's insane. All of it. Every last bit of it.
Insane.
It is insane.
This is crazy.
It's nuts.
I mean,
it really is.
The amount of everything that law enforcement could have done to stop everything that has happened, they didn't do none of it.
Nope.
I mean,
none of it.
Every situation where he should have gone to jail and been locked up before she went missing, there was so many opportunities to put him away. She would still be here.
Yeah.
Down.
Oh yeah. If they would have violated his Nevada parole when he got caught with the drug house and these different DUIs, getting caught with drugs and even assaulting Melissa, I think that was right. When he assaulted Melissa, it was close to when his Nevada bond was up, but the weed house, he was still on bond. How come they didn't contact Nevada and say, hey, you know, Derek violated parole and we're shipping him back? But, you know, he went to care, like from the parole hearing in Nevada, he went home to Illinois in the care of his mother. But here she's this biggest enabler. You know, mommy bonds him out. Mommy uses her connections to get him out. You know what? All of it. Like every time he gets bonded out, he gets the best attorneys. And, you know, his mother, to me, the mother is just as responsible. So here's another thing. I had heard from some friends that Derek had done some messed up stuff in Nevada. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know it involved bombs. We didn't know any of that till later when people were going through his record and we learned the actual details. But I heard it was for something violent in Nevada. And I told Melissa, I said, Melissa, what the hell did he do in Nevada? You know? And she said, don't worry. I talked to his mother about that. His mother told Melissa, this is what she said. She said, Derek was trying to make sure that his girlfriend took care of her kids. So he went to prison for holding a hostage with bombs to make sure that his girlfriend in this drug house that he had took care of her kids. So the mother made Derek out to be some sort of hero to children. That's how she changed the narrative of Derek terrorizing this girl for days in a drug house, holding her hostage with fucking bombs. You know, excuse my language, but you know, that is how sick and how enabling his mother has been. She conned Melissa into believing it wasn't a big deal. Oh, Derek got those charges because he was trying to make sure she took care of her kids. How the hell do you get a hostage and bomb situation for making sure your girlfriend takes care of her kids? I mean, it just ain't even, it's not even like reality. It's like so far from what happened in Nevada to say that. Then, of course, you know, bonds Derek out when he points a gun at Melissa in front of our children. You know, she bonds Derek out when he's a suspect, basically. I mean, we know he's a suspect. They might not be saying it on the thing, but bonds Derek out for everything, you know, again. And when he goes over and threatens a neighbor and get some of these high-priced attorneys, and you know, it's like she's helping him play the system. Plus, she facilitated contact in her home in violation of that bond. I truly believe that she's just as responsible as Derek, you know, for what happened to Melissa. And all this time, she's retained her trusted official position in Shannon, and in a position where she works with the police and she writes their checks as the clerk. You know, she handles the village's finances. And I mean, it's just, I don't know. It really, really bothers me. And I feel like the mother is not only that. So the lieutenant from the sheriff's department in Stevenson County, because now the Stevenson County lieutenant, though, I'm going to say this, I don't trust any of them, has been more forthcoming with information than Carroll County was. Carroll County wouldn't tell us anything, nothing, right?
Yeah.
The lieutenant from Stevenson County told us flat out that they had a grand jury, and Denise Hammer came to that grand jury and completely changed her story. Even tried to say Melissa wasn't even there that night. Did a complete 180, lied through her teeth. And that lied through her teeth is exactly what the lieutenant from Stevenson County said. Said she completely changed her story. She lied through her teeth. She is an accomplice. She deserves to be in prison as much as Derek does. Later, maybe more. She created this monster, and so have these corrupt police. And I believe this. Derek's dad, Jeff Hammer, right? I believe Derek or Derek's mother or Derek and his mother killed his dad. I believe she called in this corrupt cop, Fred Cass, who we have some documentation from Jeff Hammer's cold case file. And there was a buried report in the cold case file. And I sent it to Dennis. You guys read this. It is mind blowing because there's a witness saying her sister was with Fred Cass when Jeff Hammer's murder was covered up. And the witness is saying Fred Cass this cop is involved in organized crime. And Fred Cass, she calls him Don Gotti Jr., Fred Cass. And that Fred, mind you too, I've had some major confrontation, personal, face-to-face confrontation here in Wisconsin with Fred Cass over my children's mother's disappearance. Because I believe not only is he responsible for covering up Jeff Hammer's death for Derek and Denise, he's responsible for using his connections, in law enforcement, and that Andrew Chesney, the senator that Denise Hammer has campaigned for, I believe they're using their connections to cover up Melissa's death. And the reason why is because Derek can tell about who covered up his dad's death, his mommy and Fred Cass. So now that he's done something to Melissa, now they got to cover up Melissa's death because Derek can tell on them for what happened to his dad, Jeff Hammer. And you got all these deaths. There's another couple ones all around this Bolton Road, and they're all connected to a couple different addresses. You have Dave Allen Peters, one road down from Bolton Road. But also, the house that Jason Niesman hid out at was Lori Peters. It was Dave Peters' house. So Dave Peters, now get this. They hid Jason Niesman out, the one that helped abandon Melissa's vehicle. Dave Peters died from suicide on September 7th. September 7th is the same day Derek went bonkers with the gun and threatened Melissa in front of my kids. That was September 7th as well. And I believe Derek and Jason Niesman were the trigger men, probably Derek, because Jason Niesman sounds kind of like a coward. But I believe Derek was the trigger man in this Dave Peters suicide, so-called suicide, and helped Lori Peters clean it up. Then when Lori Peters, when that happened, Lori Peters hid Jason Niesman out. This is confirmed by Dave Peters' own daughter. Now, Dave had been dead since September 7th, same day Derek went bonkers with the gun. Now, I know, as I'm telling you guys this, I know how much it is and how overwhelming it is because it's so much and it's so messed up. But Melissa's from Wisconsin. She's not even from Illinois, but she's connected to 3 fishy suicides by 2, the Hangar and Bolton Road, and very connected. And then also connected to Derek Hammer's dad, Jeff Hammer's cold case murder, also on Bolton Road. David Allen Peters, 1 street down from Bolton Road. Another thing is, so they originally told Melissa's employer, the quadriplegic lady, that Melissa's phone pinged from Route 20 Bar and Grill. Route 20 Bar and Grill is right next to Dave Peters' house. Dave Peters had been dead for a month and 20 days. Same day Derek went nuts. Then the cops backtracked and said that maybe Melissa was just driving by there. Well, maybe Melissa went to Lori Peters and Dave Peters' house, after, like I said, a month and 20 days after Dave had died. I believe the phone did ping there because I believe it's got to do with that. So another thing, aside from Lori hiding Jason Niesman out before they let him skip off down to Florida, when Melissa disappeared, Lori Peters put big chains up over her driveway and no trespassing signs. Never had them before. Then that weekend, Mandy Peters, that's Dave Peters' daughter, went by Lori Peters' house and there was a screen off her window on the ground, like somebody tried to break in. Lori was allegedly out of town. It's some sort of retreat because of depression over Dave Peters' suicide. And so another thing, Dave Peters' suicide occurred when he was moving all of his stuff out for a week straight. So he got his storage unit open up on the 1st of the month. He died on the 7th of September. That whole week, he was moving all of his property out of his house with Lori because of infidelity. And he wrote his daughter letters talking about that Lori seeing some guy from work, Brock or something. And then, Dave ended up dying. And then when Melissa disappeared, Lori put up these no trespassing signs and a chain across her driveway. Well, when Mandy called to say, hey, Lori, there's a screen off your window. It looks like somebody tried to break in your house. Lori tells her, don't worry. I've heard two versions. I heard, don't worry, it's Derek and Jason. And then I heard, don't worry, it's Jason Niesman, as in Jason Niesman. And Mandy had come by the house. Mandy Peters, Dave's daughter, had come by the house a couple times. One time when she seen this screen off the window, and another time she'd come by.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Lost him.
Well-
Let's see if he comes back on. We lost him.
I don't know if the audience has been noticing, but I'll be sitting here watching, and you guys and him was both freezing up, and I would just be watching, and everybody's talking, but nobody's moving. So there he is.
There you are.
I got a call and it just exited me right out of this program.
Oh.
So
Oh.
hear me?
There you
There
go.
you go.
Mandy Peters came by, also saw Jason Niesman there. Mind you, this is like within a month or two of her dad, what happened to her dad. And she said, and she could tell Jason Niesman was like messed up on drugs. And she's like, Lori, why do you have this drug addict dude in your house? So Lori tells Mandy, she says, well, he's being accused of all this stuff with Melissa Trumpy, that he helped with Melissa Trumpy. He's innocent. He wasn't there. He wasn't involved. We know that Melissa's truck went to Niesman's house. That's GPS backtracked and proven. Derek wasn't walking. Melissa's truck drove to Niesman's house. Then Niesman helped Derek abandon the truck because Derek wouldn't have had time to do that walking. It's physically impossible. So Lori denied that Niesman was involved, and that's why she hit him out. So then Lori gets on this Facebook group where people were saying, well, maybe Dave Peters' suicide has something to do with Melissa's disappearance. Lori Peters gets on there and says Dave died from COVID, right? And that's when I come in and I'm like, because I'm looking at the comments and on this post, and I see her saying Dave died from COVID. And I get on there and I say, well, that's strange because I heard he died from a firearm. And then Lori starts private messaging me. And she says, oh, you're the father of Melissa Trumpy's children. And, oh, I feel so, she like played the sympathy role. She felt bad for my kids and this and that. She said COVID depressed Dave. So Dave killed himself. But we know that's not why if Dave killed himself, which I don't believe, Dave was telling his daughters he was leaving Lori for infidelity. And I've actually seen letters that Dave wrote talking about that Mandy Peters showed me. So Lori Peters said that. She also said that there's a bunch of other really strange things she lied about. So she also said she talked to the FBI about Melissa's case. She actually gave me a number for a Rockford FBI agent, and this Wayne Jankowski, same one that told Jason Niesman's brother, Joshua Niesman, not to cooperate with Melissa Trumpy's family. And she said, so she also said that she knew Wayne because she said Dave's daughters played sports with Wayne's daughters in, like high school sports, soccer or something like that. Wayne has no daughters, just so you know, because we did find that out. Also, so the FBI, when we would call, they would just say, they would refer us back to Carroll County. They wouldn't talk to us. But here, she gave me this Wayne's personal cell phone number. So I call Wayne. Wayne says they never searched Lori's house for Melissa, which Lori told me they did, which is a lie. And then Wayne, I don't know, that was really the only good thing I got from Wayne, which also remember that they're denying the FBI was even involved in Melissa's case, but Lori Peters has Wayne's phone number on speed dial. Another thing about the screen off the window. So where Lori told Mandy Peters, don't worry, it's just Derek and Jason, or don't worry, it's just Jason. How come I was handing out Melissa's missing persons flyers all up and down this Winneshek and AYP road, which is where Lori Peters' house is? I stuck a half a dozen flyers in Lori's mailbox over and over again, Melissa's missing person flyers, while I also canvassed the whole rural area, and I'd stop at every house on the road. I stopped at her neighbor's house right next door and gave him a flyer. He was like an 80-year-old retired school teacher. He said that Lori came over and told him she put the chain across the driveway and the no trespassing signs because she was terrified that somebody tried to break in her house. Well, if she's terrified, how come she told Mandy, don't worry, it's just Derek and Jason, or don't worry, it's just Jason? So then Lori started this communicating with me because of that Facebook post where she said Dave died from COVID. So she's like playing the sympathy role for a couple weeks, and she keeps inviting me out to eat. She's like, do you want to go get lunch, or do you want to go get some coffee? And I'm like, now this lady could kill me. I don't know, like, I don't trust her from Adam, but I was like, I'm going to take her up on it because maybe I can get her to slip up and say something, or maybe I can just guilt trip her, so she'll say something. So I picked a place in Freeport, which is the nearest, city, and I picked a really public place, and it was this restaurant that's right downtown, but down from the courthouse, called Amigos. So Lori came and she met me at Amigos. She came in crying fake tears over my kids and over David Peters, talking about her poor Dave did this and that, and everybody thinks she's to blame for Dave's death. Everybody, and she wasn't. There was no tears. It wasn't crying. The only thing she kept going on. Now, by this time, Niesman was in Florida. And she kept asking me, what do you think Niesman's doing in Florida? And I'm like, man, I ran with it. I said, I hear he's in the witness protection program. That really bothered her. She's like, well, what does that mean? And I said, that means they cut him a deal. He has to tell everything. And if he leaves anything out, they can take the deal right off the table. And then, so remember, she told Mandy that Jason Niesman wasn't involved in Melissa's thing and people were falsely accusing him. This is where she does a 180 on me. Well, he should get the same amount of time as Derek. She's like, I don't think they should cut him a deal, right? Wow. And she was hyper focused on Niesman, what he was doing in Florida. I said, I hear he's telling everything. She's like, where do you think they have him at? I said, I don't know. I don't know where they got him at, but I hear he's cut a deal and he's cooperating. Well, I don't think it's fair they cut him a deal. He should get the same amount of time that Derek's getting. So it's like so contradictory, all of it. It's so, and it's absolutely, she's involved. I believe that crooked Wayne agent is involved. And, you know, where the FBI is saying they're not involved, how come Wayne, and Wayne has questioned several people, you know, in Melissa's case, other people that I've talked to, Wayne questioned them along with David Mercado. Also, it's weird because Wayne's out of the Rockford branch, which is like from there, maybe 45 minutes or an hour. Wayne goes to church in Shannon. He knows all these people from Shannon. You know, they all know him. As a matter of fact, a lady was telling me they came over and questioned her about her ex-husband, and it was Wayne and David Mercado. But the FBI aren't involved in Melissa's case. They told this journalist that's been on Melissa's case now for a year plus, and he is, honestly, he's the U.S. editor for the OCCRP, and that's the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. They are a worldwide collective of journalists that only focus on organized crime and corruption. They had the Rockford branch had a liaison from the FBI tell him they're not involved in Melissa's case. Well, whose authority is Wayne Jakowski, you know, operating under then? Why is he questioning people? Why is he telling Jason Niesman's brother to not allow Jason Niesman, you know, and himself, Joshua Niesman, that's the brother, to cooperate with Melissa Trumpy's family and friends? You know, one thing that I'm aware of is that sometimes a suspect or a witness will confide to the family before they'll confide to police, because either they don't trust the police or, you know, maybe they feel guilty for what the family is going through. I'm going to tell you, I think Wayne Jakowski was obstructing right there, because what if they would have told us, you know, what if they would have told us, what if Joshua Niesman would have had Jason Niesman cooperate? And I feel 100%. So if they're denying the FBI is even involved in Melissa's case, how come it's on the news that the FBI is involved in Melissa's case? How come it's, you know, all over the newspapers? How come it's in Carroll County press releases? But nobody wants to take responsibility for this case. Nobody. And they're washing their hands of it is what they're doing. They're stepping back from it because they don't want to get wrapped up in it and go down with these corrupt police in Carroll County.
Just want to interrupt real quick. Hi, Corinne.
Hi, Benny.
Hi, Corinne. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm just trying to help you fill in the holes, hon.
Thank you. I know it's so much. It's hard to even, you know, it's so much.
Well, we have we have the full 3 years into this thing. And so I also want to mention that multiple people seen Melissa a few days before she disappeared, and she had black eyes. And people were trying to
Shannon.
Yes, people were trying to question her, like, are you okay? You know, and they were worried about her and everything. And Derek was like, mind your own business, you know, and shoving her back. And I mean, this is in a public place at Casey's, you know.
Yes.
And so also you're kind of forgetting that initially Nicole said that Stephen was calling her work all day the day she went missing.
Both Derek and Stephen.
Her work all day the day she goes missing, and then less than 2 weeks later, Nicole's like, "Oh, that never happened," but she's telling everybody this happened initially. So I believe that Melissa was down to Shannon because she had left Derek. She had taken all of her things. She was not planning on going back, but she was coaxed down there by Stephen, saying, "Oh, you're going to be safe. It's going to be okay. You know, I'm here to protect you from Ham," because she kept calling him Ham. Because she didn't want to say his name because she had that order of protection.
Yep.
And so, I mean, initially, that is what we do know is that she was coaxed down here to Stephen by the cousin. So, and then the cousin was involved in the love triangle because Derek supposedly couldn't get it up. So she was sleeping with Stephen.
It's a lot to it.
And so, yeah, I mean, if you really want to go into it, it's like, you know, the cousin was fully involved. He knew what was going on. He was trying to help his cousin, and we don't know if he like witnessed the whole thing and then helped dispose of her or what exactly occurred there. Because I mean, there's multiple witnesses that did see them at the apartment building, but she wasn't in her vehicle. They were in the RAV4.
Yeah.
They saw that vehicle out at the apartment building. And so my sister-in-law, she was up in the middle of the night, and she saw them go up into Stephen's apartment building about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, her and Pat Hartman said that from the beginning.
Exactly, and also Pat Hartman saw them go up into the apartment building. So like a month later, you know, like I was on Stephen asking, like he was my friend, he worked for me, so I was on him asking him like what kind of, you know, what exactly happened, and he's like, well, this shit goes all the way back to 2008, and you know, I only video chatted with my cousin that night, and you know, was lying to, you know, everyone about what he knew. And so I went out there with a friend of mine to his apartment building, and this is like 20 days after she's missing. And I said, Stephen, you're going to have to tell us what you know, because we know you're involved. And I'm like, so give me your phone. And so I snatched his phone out of his hand. And I took his phone and I looked through it, and any messages or any kind of correspondence to Derek was completely gone. We believe that his phone, another burner phone or whatever that Derek had, a bunch of phones and stuff was burned during this fire. The day that Melissa went missing and the day that the SWAT team came, there was a big fire of security cameras, phones, laptops, all kinds of stuff. And this was a way for them to conceal that you know, any kind of evidence of whose involvement, you know, with the murder. Like they used burner phones or whatever for this, you know, act. And this was all premeditated because, I mean, Stephen didn't admit, but admitted that he was involved. So
there's another thing too. And so when Melissa left the custody hearing and her mother got pulled aside by the Wisconsin detectives, so Derek knew before that point that the police in Wisconsin were looking for him. And so while Melissa was in court, that's when you were saying that Stephen Dapkus and Derek were calling Nicole, Melissa's employer, saying, where's Melissa? She's in court. So here's one thing where Nicole may have made I know she was trying to protect Melissa at that point, but I think Nicole made a mistake. She told Derek and Stephen Dapkus when they were calling that Melissa got arrested by those cops that took her into custody, that Melissa was arrested and going to jail. The only thing is they just questioned Melissa and they let Melissa go. I think at that point that Derek and Stephen thought that Melissa was cutting some type of deal. And then, you know, Melissa wasn't on. This is the truth. And even Melissa's mother will say this, is that Melissa protected Derek in that interview when the cops were trying to get her to tell on Derek about the high-speed chase in Melissa's vehicle. Melissa just kept lying to them, and she kept trying to stick up for Derek and protect Derek, probably because she was scared. But the thing is that one thing too, the media made her out to be some sort of cooperating witness. The truth is she really protected him to the end. You know, they didn't need to do this to her because she was trying to protect him. And that, you know, she kept saying that she left the keys to her vehicle in the vehicle and somebody came by and just randomly and stole it. But they already knew that she was lying because they had the 3 witnesses that Derek approached for a ride home after he, you know, damaged Melissa's vehicle and abandoned it. I'm hearing a lot of feedback there, like static. Yeah. I don't know if that's me.
I cleared itself up, though.
It did, huh? But yeah, I think that when Nicole told Derek and Stephen that Melissa had been arrested, and then so when Melissa got out of the police questioning, who's the first person she called was Derek. But I think at that point, She was so upset that Derek damaged her vehicle in the high-speed chase, and here's these cops, tearing her house apart a month before, and now they're pressuring her to work with him. I think that that was when she decided that she was going to leave him, because, she just realized this guy is messing up her life and just, abusive, a threat to her, a threat to the kids. He got the kids taken away from her. I still hear a lot of static.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out here.
Yeah,
my understanding was that she took everything that she had at Derek's earlier that day. And earlier that day, her and Derek and Steven took a ride to see Laverne.
Yeah.
And
they
were
bought
going to
some
Laverne to get
methamphetamine.
drugs over in Polo. And
Yeah.
on the way over there, Steven said that they were questioning Melissa as to what she had told. What did she say to them about Derek? And like Derek was like beating her up in the car, like emotionally, like he was like yelling at her, like just going off. He was not having it that she didn't tell him anything. Like he was not believing any of it. So like Steven's witnessing this whole thing, and he even admitted that, Derek just shut down. Like at one point they were doing lines off the center console or whatever, and then Derek just like shut down. And like this bad look came over his face, and Steven said even he was kind of scared at that time, and so I mean that's my belief is that his involvement in this crime as well was from the earlier in the day scenario too, because he had been with them. And then she went to work, and then when she was at work, he's calling. The cousin is calling all day long. Well, Melissa, you're gonna be fine because I'm gonna be with, and you're gonna be safe. And I mean, needless to say, they're premeditating her disappearance here. What are they gonna do? Because no face, no case. They're gonna get rid of her to keep her from telling the full story on him.
The one thing, like what Karina's saying about Steven being scared of Derek. Well, Derek's own mother was scared of him enough to call 911 those 2 times, and say that he wouldn't let her in the basement. He left with some tarps and Christmas tree bags, her folding table. And then when she quit cooperating that morning and did a 180, I'm going to tell you what I truly believe. She realized at this point, I think she wanted to, I think she wanted to address what happened to Melissa, but then I think she realized, well, Derek can tell on us about Jeff Hammer, the dad's death, and what happened and who covered that up. And that's when she did the 180. I think that she realized that she could go down as that sort of person. Derek is not a loyal person. Derek is selfish. Melissa saved this guy's life. And a year later, saved his life. Literally, a year later, how does he repay her? That's the sort of person Derek is. Derek is not loyal. He's not that. Even in the criminal world, they talk about a stand-up guy. A stand-up guy is someone who doesn't snitch or rat people out. Derek will sell out his own mother in a heartbeat to save his own ass. That's just the sort of person. He sold Melissa out. He would sell his mother out. He would sell anybody out. And I think the mother did want to cooperate, but then she realized she was in too deep with Derek because they covered up his dad's death, and Derek could tell about that. So now they're covering this up. It's like one cover up leads to another cover up, and they're covering this cycle. It is. It's a cycle. Yep.
Well,
and because
and
these people all have dirt on each other.
I mean, the police never actually questioned anyone. Like they said they were going to go to Steven's apartment and question Steven. They never went there. I mean, even if they did, it was very briefly outside his door, and they just like, oh, well, we were here and then we left, kind of thing.
We sent 2 detectives to Steven's apartment, and if he would have ripped out his kitchen floor, they would have noticed it. How could they have not? Corinne, you've seen the pictures. How could they have not noticed it? They would have tripped on the different layers of the kitchen floor, even if they were blind.
Well, the neighbors admitted it was the very next day. This is the sick part. This is the very next day. My sister-in-law's apartment floods, like backs up with red blood type sewage in her apartment, in the bathroom, in the toilet, in the tub. And then Steven's apartment is literally the floor is being ripped out, and there's big stains all over this floor, and then like small partial blood spatter. Because a friend of mine, Renee, is also like, she's into like the supernatural and stuff like that. She's a medium. So she was out there, you know, trying to befriend Steven to, you know, get information. And so she was able to obtain the pictures of this floor ripped out. He didn't even have a replacement floor. He had it just all ripped out, big, huge, like stains underneath of this floor that had been ripped out. And then like a possible blood spatter on walls. I mean, there was multiple pictures of this.
Yeah, exactly like she's saying, though. He ripped out the floor not to even put a new floor in.
Right. And the neighbor next door or downstairs, she's also admitting she was there at the apartment with Melissa and Derek and Steven, you know. And then all of a sudden she's not talking, you know, she's not saying nothing. She doesn't know anything. That was, you know, she admitted that she was there and then turned around and said, "Oh no, that was a couple days before," because she had been there every single time almost they had been there.
Jessica Boyer.
Yep. And I mean, the landlord, he's a total fucking, I mean, really, literally, this guy is like involved in organized crime or something too. He's from out by Chicago. And so he's housing all these meth heads and drug addicts and shit in this apartment building. It's fallen in. Who's going to be remodeling their apartment in this fallen in building that's, you know, basically for meth heads? And then less than a year later, Stevens, the building burns down mysteriously. Mysteriously, this building just burns down.
The fourth floor of the building. They said Steven lit the fire. People said Steven was up on the fourth floor and then it burst in the
he was up there. And they said, "Oh no, this is an accidental fire because the building doesn't have wiring up to code." Yeah, they just covered that whole thing up. So basically the same day that this fire happens, my boyfriend's working out in Freeport. He's coming back from Freeport and he sees a bag of women's clothes strewn out all over fucking Bolton Road, down off of Stanton and Bolton and Shannon, coming around the curve. And the sheriff's department's picking up this bag of clothes. Same day this fire happens. And they said a lot of Melissa's things were missing. But why would it doesn't explain to me any other way. Why would the sheriff's department care about these clothes that the, highway department hit mowing?
2 months after Stephen Dapkus's fourth floor of his apartment building burned up, Brett and Brad Wiesner, the guys whose names are currently on the land around the airport, they had an abandoned house on Bolton and Stanton Road, and that went up in flames in the middle of the night, and they called it an arson, and it was an abandoned house. And it was 2 months after Stephen Dapkus's fourth floor of his apartment building went up into flames. So you've got all these suspicious deaths tied to Bolton Road and to the airplane hangar. And now this area is really rural too. It's not even like, it's not like the inner city. You know, you figure you have a place that's tied to 4 deaths. It's going to be someplace like, you know, in the hood, in a bad neighborhood, in the city. Well, there's been 4 deaths in the, you know,
it's farmland.
Just out of curiosity, this area, how far from Crystal Lake, Illinois is it?
Like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours.
You're probably about 2 hours, I'd say. Yeah. Approximately 2 hours out here. It's like 40 miles to Rockford from Shannon.
Okay. I had an incident happen one time in Crystal Lake, and it was total BS with the police department. I bought a truck, and I had to go get it, and then they tried to say I was overweight, pulling it on a trailer with another truck, and they basically impounded me and escorted me to an ATM to get money to pay my ticket, or I could not leave with my property. And their little office was like on a gravel road, and then like it was an old It wasn't old, but it was like a split level entry house with like a chain link fence around it.
Yeah.
And it was total the most shively looking setup I'd ever seen. But yeah, I had to go to the ATM and get cash with them in order to pay my ticket so I could leave. So
Alex,
I'm just curious, when you guys have been explaining this, I was just curious, as to where that was at from that area.
Shannon, Illinois is located in the northwest corner of Illinois. It's like 35 minutes to Monroe, Wisconsin, and probably maybe 40 minutes to Iowa. That's about the general location there.
Okay.
Then when you're saying how the cops did you there, and it's like, that sounds like some extortion, but you know what? People in Illinois, I mean, you know what they call the cops and the judicial system there? It's the good old boy club.
Yeah.
That's what
It's the fact that somebody's paying somebody to pay somebody to pay somebody. They're just paying these people off. The car that was stolen that morning, the neighbor admitted that somebody came over and paid her to keep it from being a stolen vehicle, even. The one that was gone for 45 minutes that he took. The neighbor admitted that they came there and paid these people, to keep it quiet.
Wow.
I even sent it. I sent out an email to the sheriff's office about this case, and it kept getting returned to me, and I kept having to send it. And I went through the newscaster to get the correct email for this sheriff. It kept returning to me like 6 different times. It returned to me. They wouldn't even take my email on the case.
This is just crazy. It really is.
I mean, at one point, I sat down with Joe Davies County and told them everything that we knew about Stephen's involvement, and then about and then pretty soon Jay Rhodes surfaces involvement, and it's like all these people in some form were interconnected. To me, they worked for me, or they were my tenant, or and weird happenings. I mean, we found that Jay Rhodes was trying to drug Courtney.
There's a bunch of strange stuff going on like that.
Like she ended up having to get a restraining order on him because he was stalking her. His sister was stalking her. I had them on video camera at my house, driving by slowly when she was coming over to, pick up her son that I was babysitting and stuff. It was disgusting. I mean, this guy had a broken shovel, a fucked up looking saw. I seen the saw one time and then it was gone. As soon as we saw it one time, this thing was gone. But it had like weird rusting to the chain of it and stuff, and you just knew it was not right, And then she kept threatening to lock. Jay Rhodes kept threatening to lock Courtney in this shed. And things of that nature, and then pretty soon we're finding like he's got powder hidden underneath of her sink and stuff, like he was trying to drug her. I mean, she ended up getting a restraining order on him because I ended up going in and testifying to the fact that I saw these people stalking her. Otherwise they weren't going to give it to her. She had to have witnesses to the stalking and the actual fact that he was a threat.
Because they're protecting these guys.
And the thing was that they moved in like a month after Melissa died or was disappeared or missing or whatever. They moved in that month. It was December 1st. And I went in there and I said to them about this case, I said, did you hear about Melissa Trumpy being missing? And Jay Rhodes flipped. I mean, the way that this guy he just went off on me. He was like, well, you don't want to get involved with that. You don't want to get involved with these people. They're bad people. They'll come after you too. And I'm like, I'm not scared. This family deserves to find out what happened to their mother. Ben needs to know what happened to his kid's mother. I'm not going to continue on because Mandy was crying out to the news multiple times. Her sister, I know that Damian McMint, he searched on foot himself over 500 acres of land. He was just all over Carroll County. They did searches in Mount Carroll. They did searches in Savannah. They did searches all over Shannon. I mean, the whole community of Shannon, there was so many searches, but the police stopped their searches after 1 month. And then all of a sudden, the day Melissa Trumpy goes missing, our police chief just quits. He's no longer the police chief anymore the day she goes missing. Rob Grow-Herring, he just gave it up. They arrested Derek with the tanks and all that, and then our police chief just quit. So then they send out these cops from Chicago. So the family's holding peaceful candlelight vigils and stuff. They're out there harassing the family for even having candlelight vigils in front of Denise Hammer's house, the last place she was seen.
Yeah.
Threatening to arrest her and arrest the family and everybody.
Jeez. Just gets better and better.
I mean, yeah, the whole story's gone on as a saga for 3 years. I mean, it's like each time we fill in another piece, but we fully believe that the village of Shannon is under some sort of corrupt rule too, and there's money missing. There's, they need to be audited. There's got to be something that could be done to prove that, because Denise Hammer didn't even claim a salary for 1 year that we have the proof of audit, like we got the financials for, and she didn't even take a salary for 1 year. Now, and she signs as village clerk, but she has her niece signing as treasurer. So, it was a clerical error by her niece.
Tell them about Lanark and then Joe Davies. So at one point in time, Denise Hammer was not just the clerk in Shannon. She was the clerk in Lanark. Then when she left there, she had another niece take over the clerk position in Lanark.
Yep, then Joe Davies too.
Joe Davies, Melissa Hammer is the treasurer of Joe Davies County too. So it's like these women are controlling the financials. And we believe, along with the drug stuff, that this is like, cartels aren't just involved in drugs. They're involved in sex trafficking. They're involved in skimming. Even think of the mafia. What do? They skim. They skim from the casinos. They skim from the unions. They skim from everything. I think the corruption is so deep in Illinois. And I was telling you guys about the lady from Dixon. The biggest case, Rita Crundwell, the biggest case of a public official embezzling is Rita Crundwell from Dixon, Illinois, which is an hour away. And she was the treasurer of Dixon, and she embezzled $53 million over a 20-year period. And she got caught because when she was out of town, somebody else was there and got the mail and saw some stuff and realized she was putting all this money into stuff.
Well,
Denise Hammer has
the one
foundations. She has charities. She has there's a Denise Hammer Foundation. She has charities. She has she has like scholarships that she gives out. When you look up like money laundering, that's one of the number one things that they mention is charities and trusts, foundations. Because here's the thing, you can take a lot of money, split it up into really small payments, and say, Joe Blow just gave $1,500 and put it in there. And if it's not over $10,000, the IRS never even looks at it. And if you do that for 50 Joe Blows and different amounts of money, and then you can also claim that there were anonymous donations.
Well, Denise Hammer's new mayor, or the girl that's going to be mayor, there's a girl that's fighting to be the mayor of Shannon right now. But the problem with her is they don't want her because they know she's going to get this audited and get everything checked out. And she's already requested financials for the village, and they're missing. You're missing records. The numbers don't add up in spots. Some of the people that were paid were like, who are these people? You know what I mean? Like, they brought in police officers specifically from Chicago for about 7 months in Shannon. And then we were without an officer on and off for since Melissa went missing, they were on and off without an officer. They didn't even have an officer on duty. They just completely shut down the cops. And then you call the Carroll County Sheriff's Office about anything, And they're like, well, this is Shannon's jurisdiction. We don't have any jurisdiction over any of it. So we can't do anything for you guys. You know what I mean? It's really bad out there, and they have some serious embezzlement or something going on that that needs to be investigated. That's for sure. But
There's definitely some
Joe
suspicious stuff
Davies
going
County
on.
was initially involved with Melissa's case. When they were doing questioning and going around and stuff, they sent 2 Joe Davies detectives to my door. And that's only because I went into Mount Carroll and cried to my pastor that I couldn't get anybody to listen to me about the things that I had heard and knew about Stephen. And so they sent Joe Davies over, and then they never followed up, did anything after that.
When she mentions Joe Davies County, so that's the next county up on that northwest side from Carroll County. It's also the other side of the depot. Yep. So one thing is that there is documentation going back years in Joe Davies County and this is U.S. court records and in police reports of people saying that the Joe Davies cops are involved in this drug ring for years. And I mean, the sort of international trafficking I was telling you guys about. There was a sheriff that came in I think it was 2012. I might be wrong about the year. But he ran on a platform of cleaning up Joe Davies' corruption, cleaning up the former police corruption. So when he came in, he asked the feds, him and the public defender for the county, because all of his clients were coming in saying, we're getting our drugs from this cop, and then this cop arrests us. So they got one cop selling them all the drugs, and some other cops arresting them. Well, when the new sheriff came in, and this is in U.S. court records too. This is federal court. When the sheriff came in, he asked the FBI and the DEA to investigate a rogue group of Joe Davies County cops involved in drug trafficking. The FBI refused. And this stuff, there is so much documentation of this going back for so long. There's documentation of another guy ran for sheriff in Joe Davies. He's talking about the suspicious deaths in the 90s, early 2000s, and he had a website about Joe Davies corruption, and he brought all these different suspicious deaths up then, and not even the ones I'm talking about, but other ones. There is so much documentation of these cops coming up as suspects themselves in these murders where people are saying this cop did it, that cop did it in these murders in Joe Davies counties. And Joe Davies and Carroll County are in full cahoots. Anytime Carroll County runs an investigation, Joe Davies joins them on the investigation and kind of like writes it off like, oh yeah, Carroll County's running a good investigation. It's a clean investigation. I don't know if you guys can hear me. It sounds like a lot of static.
Well, and you also have like suspicious deaths out here that like the girl in Savannah, they found a body in Savannah in the river. They didn't even do a press release except for the fact that the public kept asking, where's the press release for this girl that was found? Because Richard Holy is a man who just hangs out by the river, finds this body, and so he's telling everybody in town, I found this body, and they're not reporting it anywhere. We don't to this day do not know this girl's name.
There is quite a few like that. And so there is multiple cases of human remains being recovered. And they're like, so this is what they'll say. Sometimes they know who that person is. Sometimes they're unidentified. They always say a cause of death could not be determined, but foul play is not suspected.
Right.
How does that make sense?
They just cancel. I mean, they just cancel everything out. Every time something happens. Yeah,
the most fishy suicide you've ever heard of.
Any place else in the world, you will see news like news of what's going on. Like if there was a fire down the road on 14th Street or whatever. Not out here. Carroll County will not release any press releases for anything. It took a long time for Ben's family to get a press release that, you know, Melissa was missing and stuff, and to continue to get releases for this. Because they don't give any news out here. We're not allowed to know anything. If you want to know something, you have to dig in yourself, or you're not going to find out. It's pretty
There
sick.
is deaths that people tell us about, suspicious deaths. You can't find doing an internet search where people are telling us about these deaths, and you're looking online, you're thinking they're pulling your leg, or that it's just, you know,
No, you can find the person's obituary, but that's it.
And then you find out from other people, no, what they're saying. What about this suspicious death? What about that one? What about this suspicious suicide? What about these people? They're all connected, and their death, and their death, and their death. And there is tons of them. And I mean, they go back years. They go back years and years. And a lot of people know, like when you talk to people, they know what's going on there. But it's not really talked about. People are literally in fear of the police there. You know, it is, people are terrified to come forward. Dennis, you have that Jeff Hammer, the report from Jeff Hammer's cold case file. That's the sort of reaction people have towards the police there. They're terrified of the police there. People, and it's not like where I live in Wisconsin, you know, are the police perfect here? No. But I'm going to tell you what, they're doing their jobs here. You know, this is an hour away from Shannon right here, and it is a world of difference. It's like, I live right by the police station here. They keep us safe. They keep, our town isn't flooded out with methamphetamine like it is down in Illinois. And people actually, for the most part, trust the police here. No one trusts the police in Carroll County. Nobody, not even the police themselves.
And that's the thing too. During Melissa's case, we reached out to Greene County multiple times to give them information to try to help us, and they're like, "Well, we're really sorry, but our hands are tied because this is an Illinois case, out of our jurisdiction." So,
but Melissa was a Wisconsin resident, and all these. So here's another thing. Here's one more thing. So Melissa was a witness against Derek in the Illinois Weed House, the drug house from 2019. He still hasn't been to trial on yet. Melissa was a witness against Derek in Illinois for pointing a gun at her, and a witness in the high-speed case. Now, if a person has somebody threaten a witness, or they tell the witness's sister, like, hey, tell your brother not to testify against me. You know, that's what tampering, witness tampering. You know, but Derek Hammer can get rid of Melissa, and she's a witness in him in cases in 2 different states, in multiple cases. What, you can't charge him with federal witness tampering?
No, where's it at?
So just
it's
out of
insane.
curiosity, this whole entire time, has there ever been anybody else that's name has ever been brought up that has nothing to do with Derek and that whole group of people? Has there been anybody else that's ever been brought up? Any other scenario? Anything else? Or is this just what it's always been?
Other people's names have been brought up, but it's other people connected to Derek. Like they say, another person that's been brought up a lot is this Brad Eleanor. And that's another one of Steven's old bosses. Yep. So Brad Eleanor, it was those Eleanor Farms and Eleanor Trucking. He's also the guy that's driving around the anhydrous ammonia trucks and is definitely selling methamphetamine. His son got busted selling meth for him. And this Brad, there's a lot of stuff to it where people think that's got something to do with Melissa's case too.
Yeah, that was that the brother got busted, like
the
maybe
son.
The son got busted maybe 6 months after Melissa disappeared.
Yep.
Something like that. and he was like actually like a neighbor almost to me. And
Wow.
and Stephen admitted to working for Eleanor Farms when Melissa was disappeared. That's where he was working at the time. And
So
we just found out at the last public meeting that they paid Joe Davies $3,000 for the SWAT team. Now they never reported that money on any other report that we have in our possession. But all of a sudden now they're paying them $3,000 for the SWAT team.
Jeez.
Through the village.
Wow.
Oh, word.
I mean, some of the actual like aldermen or whatever you call it, you know, they were shocked to find out that they were paying that much, and they're like, "Well, have we ever used this? I think we only used this like one time," and they were referring to that case.
Derek
Like,
Cameron.
why are we paying them that kind of money?
Wow.
Jeez.
It's all nuts. You know, the one thing is that, like I said, Melissa wasn't even telling on Derek. She was protecting Derek to the end.
Yeah.
She saved this bum's life. Literally, all this guy ever did was traumatize my children, traumatize her. She didn't deserve this. My kids have no closure. You know what? They've never gotten an opportunity to say goodbye to Melissa. They haven't been able to bury their mother, to lay her to rest. You know, I mean, Melissa's family hasn't had that opportunity. These cops, I'm to the point, and this is how I feel at this point. I'm more upset with these corrupt police covering up this case than I am at Derek. You know, Derek's a piece of shit. Derek, you can't expect better from Derek. You know what I mean? You can only expect, you look at Derek's history, Derek is Derek. He's a piece of shit. But you know what? We should be able to expect better from this law enforcement. And honestly, they're fucking worse than he is.
Sucks. I live in Carroll
They're
County.
worse than he is.
I live in Carroll County. The offenders have more rights.
I'm to the point where Illinois is literally set up for the criminals.
Yep.
So they rarely ever charge without human remains. Everything is set up. Everything is set up to benefit the people who are breaking the law, not the victims. Everything is set up for criminals. The whole state, and that goes to the high levels of the politicians, the politics, and the official stuff going on there. Everything is just set up to protect them because they're all crooked and the whole damn state is corrupt. You know, and you look at the laws there and you look at the laws in other states, the laws there really don't even make sense because it's just not, it's not even set up to keep people safe or keep the community safe. It's set up so these corrupt people can protect themselves. And that's it. That's just who the law works for. So it works for people like Derek. Who it doesn't work for is victims like Melissa, and it's not even just like mishandling or loopholes. These people are covering up what happened to Melissa. They've been doing it from day one. Kareem could tell you, they could have had Derek, Niesman, Dapkus, Jay Rhodes. They could have had them guys hemmed up in a few weeks, and they could have pressed them to tell what happened to Melissa. And these guys, I'm going to tell you what, if they did not feel protected by this law enforcement, they would tell. But right now, they don't have to tell because the law enforcement is actively protecting them. The second that they lose that protection, every single one of them will tell. I believe that wholeheartedly, Derek included. I'm actually to the point, I hope Derek tells. And I hope he tells on all these corrupt police. I hope he tells about Fred Cass covering up his dad's death. I hope he tells about the organized crime. I hope he tells about all of it. Yeah. I'm to the point, I think the biggest danger is these corrupt police. And I think Derek's mother and these corrupt police, they created Derek. And it's like Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. Who are you more mad at, Dr. Frankenstein or the monster?
Right. Right.
It's Dr. Frankenstein. You're the one. You made this guy. Mommy enabled him. The corrupt police, the police that covered up his dad's death, they enabled him. Now they're enabling him in Melissa's death. And you know what? Until they're stopped, they'll make more Derek Hammers, and I believe that. You know what? I hate Derek. I despise him. But at the same time, these police are worse. They're worse than him. And what they're doing, I believe wholeheartedly that it has all got to do with this drug trade on the Mississippi River and all of this corruption. And it's not just drugs. I believe it's sex trafficking. I believe it's drugs. I believe it's the skimming from the utilities payments and the treasuries on a systematic, widespread. That's why Illinois doesn't have nice roads. Hell, they tax the shit out of everybody. They have my girlfriend pays twice as much taxes in Illinois as she would pay in Wisconsin. They have toll roads. They have legal marijuana. How come they're not like Colorado? How come they can't have anything nice? Because the whole fucking state is corrupt and they're skimming and ripping off every nickel and dime that they can. It is a fucking cartel. These people, when I say the good old boys club, literally, it is these corrupt officials. It is these corrupt cops. It is these corrupt politicians that they're funding their campaigns. They're grooming these people for high level. This shit is generational. It's been going on for 40, 50 years. People are sending their kids to law school to become attorneys. They're putting their kids up to become sheriffs and cops. They're sending their kids to become politicians, and they're grooming them and they're funding their campaigns. And when you look at other countries and we talk about the drug war and everybody's like, oh, Mexico. The money is coming from here. So theoretically, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. If there's cartels in Mexico, there's cartels right here, not Mexican cartels, Americans. And there's cartels. If there's cartels in Colombia, the money is coming from here. So if the cartels in Mexico is the police and it's the politicians and it's the military, in Mexico, they say whole platoons or whatever the hell in the Mexican army ran away and joined the cartel, the traffickers, because it's money. And that's the thing. And that's Illinois in a nutshell. You know what? You have these people and they're running around representing themselves as like some high, elites, like Derek's mother and his family. And by the way, his family is the richest family in the area. The Hammer family is one of the oldest families in the area. It's the family with all the money. And his mom is in the politics. She dang campaigned for Andrew Chesney. These people are all connected. And all of this stuff, I think aside from the drugs, I think they're controlling the grain shipments, the corn, the soybeans, the wheat, all of it. I think this stuff goes so deep and it's so much more than anyone can even see just looking at it from on the surface. It's so deep. And I believe that it's a lot more. It's drugs, it's sex trafficking. And I believe that when they're sending drugs up the Mississippi River, I believe they're sending money and weapons back down south to the Gulf of Mexico. And when I heard about Aaron Keyes and this island with these sex trafficking slaves on the Tennessee River, I'm like, you know what? That's how they're, if they bring the drugs across the border from Texas or from Mexico into Texas or Mexico into California, if they're bringing it into a border state, it gets red flagged, right? Going across the border. Then every county they drive through, every state they drive through, every road they drive through. But guess what? They bring the drugs up the Mississippi River to Illinois. They can send it in a train car full of corn back to California or to Texas or to Florida or up to Canada. They can send the drugs anywhere they want and it never gets looked at twice. And aside from the fact that they're paying off all these people up and down the damn river to cover this stuff up for them, I think it's been going on for years. And yeah. And I believe that when I heard about Aaron Keyes and this stuff and the cops asking him to sex traffic and stuff, now that's something too they've talked about before. Derek, there's several people that have said Derek offered Melissa, with the cousin and stuff. That's not the only one. Derek also had his brother's wife pissed off because he was sending pictures of Melissa asking his brother if he wanted to have sex with her. And the brother's sister found the pictures on the brother's phone. and got pissed off at Derek. They didn't even want Melissa around there. They blame Melissa, right? Blame the victim, right? I have my friend that after Melissa and I split up, he said Derek was sending him nude pictures of Melissa, asking him if he wanted to sleep with Melissa and this and that. And like, Derek treated Melissa like a piece of property, you know, to do with whatever he pleased. And I just think all of this stuff, it goes so much deeper, you know, and it is, dude, when the FBI is denying they're involved in Melissa's case, how come Wayne Jakowski is questioning people? How come Wayne Jakowski is obstructing with Joshua Niesman, saying don't cooperate with Miss Melissa's family and friends? I think that's absolute obstruction, because you know what? Joshua and Jason Niesman might have cooperated, and they might have told us stuff. But here, of course, the FBI is not involved in Melissa's case, I guess. It's funny it says that on the nightly news still. I could send you excerpts from YouTube of that news show where they say they're involved. I could send you a copy of the press release from Carroll County where it says they're involved. But they tell a big journalist. I mean, like I said, Kevin Hall has not only connections with journalists worldwide, he's also the U.S. editor for this group of journalists. They're on 6 different continents. Kevin Hall is in Washington, D.C., and he talks to people in the White House and political people in D.C. where his office is at. You know, he's actually a pretty high power journalist, and they tell him they're not involved in Melissa's case. You know, to me, it's just, they're just all crooked. And I think the FBI is involved in all of this. The DEA is involved in all this. Where's the FAA at? You know, we filed our complaints. I went over to the library by my house here. It's right next to the police station. I went to the library. I filled out a huge complaint, you know, online complaint with the FAA. How can you have a hangar, an airplane hangar, owned and operated by a dead guy for 12 years? Who's responsible for that? But then when I did some digging, like, why would somebody do that? Here's the thing. I read a story, and it was about a group of Homeland Security agents in Florida, and their job is to confiscate airplanes that have fake false identity ownership or have falsified flight log data, you know, because it's these drug traffickers, and nobody wants to put a plane in their name that is flying around drugs and money. So these Homeland Security agents, and believe me, I tried contacting them about this and never got a response from anybody. But these Homeland Security agents can confiscate a plane solely based on false flight log data, solely based on false ownership of an airplane. They can just confiscate it. And they say nobody ever shows up to court to contest it, you know, because that's what these they'll buy an airplane for one trip and abandon it. You know, it's like they make so much money off the load of dope, you know, the plane is nothing. You know, it's like, yeah. And we're talking about these planes cost hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. But the drugs are worth so much more. They don't give a shit about the plane. Well, how come there's an airplane act? When I say a hangar with the FAA, it is an actual airport. It may just be a grass runway in a shed with a plane in it, but it is an active airport with the FAA. How can it be in Dwayne Sneak's name 12 years after, 11 and a half, 12 years after Dwayne Sneak shot himself? Of course, like everybody else in the area's got to have the highest suicide rate in the flipping country. I've never seen so many suicides and so many fishy, even unexplained deaths. Oh, no, no cause of death, no foul play. No identity, no foul play. Identity, no cause of death, no foul play. I could show you repeated, both in Carroll County and Joe Davies, over and over and over again. How many times can a coroner pull that one off? You know, how many times can he use that same, I guess in that area, whatever they say just goes, you know? And I think the coroner, he's been there 26 years. His dad was a coroner before him, which is odd. He owns 5 funeral homes as well, the coroner does. So I have 2 different cases where the family members told me the coroner made them feel very uncomfortable. One of them was a guy hanging in a tree I have the article from the newspaper where it says the press release in the newspaper about this guy found hanging in a tree. He also was a missing person for 2 months. Where's the last place he was seen? The Carroll County Jail, right? So they find him 2 months later hanging in a tree. My girlfriend reached out and we got a hold of his ex-wife. The guy was from Bachelor, Louisiana. His name was Millard Rogers. So they told Millard's family, now mind you, he'd been hanging for 2 months, right? They told Millard Rogers' family, the coroner did, that there wasn't enough left of Millard's body to send home to his family. So the funny thing is they are still sending home the bodies of MIA soldiers from wars 50 years ago when they find them. How are you going to tell me in 2 months there's not enough left? You have to cremate him. There's not enough left to send home. So the coroner pressured Millard's family to cremate him. You know, I think it's a bunch of bullshit. If you're hanging in a tree, there's enough left of your body to send home. There is so many of these bodies, and they find them. It's like, okay, you don't have an identity. You don't have a cause of death. How about the DNA you said you ran 4 years ago on them? Where's that at? You know, where's that at? 4 years later, you can't tell me that didn't pop up yet, you know, but nothing. Because that's the thing is they don't even want to put out a press release about these deaths. And look, sometimes they just absolutely don't. I'm going to tell you what Corrine was talking about. So there was a African-American woman found in the Mississippi River about, give or take, maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and early like spring or summer. And it took us calling, because at first people call me, they said they found a woman in the river, and we're thinking, well, maybe, you know, any human remains recovered, we're wondering if it's Melissa. So we were calling, asking for them to put out a press release for 10 days before they did. They still never gave a identity, right? They said it was no foul play suspected, but they were leaving the case open as an open investigation, so they don't have to tell us anything, right? And they said they're saying they suspected suicide, but they're leaving it open as an active investigation. Because if it's suicide, then we can FOIA request the suicide report, you know, in which we have in Dave Peters' case and in Cole Shaney's place, you know, in his death. So they basically, they don't want to tell you when these deaths are happening. They basically want to hide it from the public. They do as what they can to hide it from the public. When the public presses them for answers, they give as minimal answers as possible. So if this lady died from suicide in the Mississippi River, where, how, what type of investigation did you do? How do you know? No foul play suspected, but you're leaving it as an open an active investigation. Where's her name? How do we know you contacted her family? How do we know anything? You know, but that's common practice there. And I'm telling you, it's none of it is right. None of it is right. This is not, you know, it's just, I don't know, you know.
Hey, Benny, we hate to interrupt you, but
on StreamYard, I get 2.5 hours to stream live before it shuts down, and we're at 2 hours and 28 minutes.
I'm tired anyways. So we can always reconvene some other time too. I'm up for that.
You're more than welcome anytime.
And Corinne, thank you for coming on the show, honey. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Corinne. Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate all of you, like, you know, taking the time to look into this. And so we have a lot of documentation. We got a lot of documentation about the cops being involved in drug activity for years. We got a lot of documentation about suspicious deaths. We got a lot of documentation about all these connections that I'm telling you about. This stuff is in black and white on paper, on the internet. This stuff isn't like rumor mill stuff that, you know, I try and leave the rumor mill stuff out of it, because nothing that's, you know, that's not in black and white isn't a connection, and hearsay isn't, you know, good. But a lot of this stuff we have documented. And I'll tell you what, the best documentation of all. So we were telling people for 3 years, organized crime and corruption. They're just, they're blowing it off. Oh, it's Derek Hammer. He's a super criminal, you know. And not only is he a super criminal, but nobody, you know, we just get slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist. Well, we were telling them this for 3 years. We only got that Jeff Hammer report like 7-8 months ago. And when we got it, so Melissa's family, literally, they spent 2.5 years like, oh, Ben's a conspiracy theorist. He's the tinfoil hat club member, and you know, they're friends of theirs that tried to instill themselves in the investigation. Oh, Ben's crazy. Ben's this and that. You know what? When we got the Jeff Hammer report, anybody read